It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's a brand new tune from the band Harem Scarem, a tune called All I Need. The name of the new album is called 13, and Lucky 13, I guess, for this guy. It's the vocalist, the main guy, the dude in Harem Scarem. It's Harry Hess. Harry, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Excellent, man.
Good.
Well, Harry, I got to say, man, for a record, I honestly 2 years ago never thought I would ever get to hear. I'm damn glad to hear it, man. Good to have you back.
Well, 2 years ago, I never thought we'd make it. So it's good to be back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back a little bit, Harry, so that we can kind of paint the picture of where you are now. It's no secret the band went on a hiatus in 2006, I think.
Yeah,
2006
or something like that.
Right.
Yep.
And then you guys regrouped a year or so ago to re-record Mood Swings. You added a couple of tracks to it, and basically you went and toured a little bit. But outside looking in, I don't even think at that point you guys really thought that you were going to go further. I think the impression was that it really was going to be a one-off with some shows to go with it. Is that indeed the case, or was this the plan the whole time to bring the band back and regroup and go forward?
No, not at all. It was exactly what you described before, is that it was something that we were approached by a promoter to come and do a reunion show out in the UK at a festival called Frontier. At a Fire Fest.
Right.
I'm getting the festivals mixed up. And they want us to play the whole Mood Swings record, and the promoter there said, well, it's the 20th year anniversary of Mood Swings. And I was like, really? Oh, so it was not even on my radar doing that. But, as we got talking, the plans and the dates got bigger because we thought, all right, well, if we're going to come and do this, which would be fun to do, let's not do all this rehearsing and, learn all the songs again to do one show. Let's do more shows. So we ended up putting a tour together, and then the whole re-recording idea came up as well because we didn't own the original record. Warner owns it, and so the only way that it made sense for us to kind of, be involved in the re-release of it would be to re-record it. So we put all that together, and we still had no plans on being a band again and making a new record. But as we were on the road and we were touring, and, we were really actually overwhelmed and surprised how many people, first of all, came up to us and told us how much they missed us and wanted us to continue. And it was fun again, like being away was the smartest thing that we could have done with regards to, now continuing and also continuing with any kind of a perspective on the whole thing, because if you never stop, you don't really know what you've got, and mm-hmm. I think for us, we realized that we had great fans. They were very loyal, and they were still extremely interested in what we were doing musically at that time, but also with what we could still do. I'm 46 now. I mean, I guess I quit, quote unquote, when I was 39, which in this day and age, as a rock musician or a rock fan, it's not old, Right. So we've got guys in their 60s that are doing this, and so I just kind of have a new perspective on it and thought, hey, you know what? Let's sit down and see if we can write something that we like, and if we can't, then we won't mention it. And that's, I think, it was just a bit of a safeguard for us. It was in the back of our mind that, hey, if this goes really well, why wouldn't we? But none of us were kind of in the frame of mind to just throw it out there and assume that we could, get back together and write songs that were viable and then sit, through it all and record and blah, blah, blah. So when that became a reality, that's when we thought, okay, well, we think we've got some songs that are really going to work good. And then we really started working hard on it at the beginning of this year and worked on it for 4 or 5 months solid and until we finished. So now we're like, yeah, we can do this again and we'll continue to do it. Like we feel like we're back and we want to continue and we'll make more records and keep playing. And we're kind of back, on the same cycle we were before, but now with a new perspective on the whole thing.
Sure. Now were there differences, when you come back? Because obviously when you're away that long, and especially for you personally, I know you did some solo work and you did some other things.
Yeah.
Did the whole process change, not only for you, but Pete and everybody else? Did the whole process change in any ways, or was it really the whole proverbial getting back in the saddle and just riding on down the road type of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, nothing changed one bit at all. And, we still work together, and I was saying that at the time, when we stopped making Harem Scarem records, I mean, we were probably working together on other people's records at that time. Okay. When we decided it was really, honestly, can we sit in a room and write more songs like the ones we've written for the last 20-something years? Like, what's the point? What are we going to do different? And do either of us feel like doing it? And the answer was no back then. So, and even now, moving forward, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. So it was never a matter of any personal issues or any problems. Those guys are great musicians, and the first guys I'd call when I'm making a record, no matter what. And that's what it was like when we weren't in Harem Scarem together. We were still working together on other people's records. So Nothing changed at all. And now, after the tour, when we came back, getting back in the studio, like, just like it was yesterday, and like no time had passed at all.
Sure. Now, listening to 13, the one thing that sticks out to me is that there's a bit more grittiness than in the past. And that's not only with you vocally, but that's also in the guitars. Songs like Troubled Times are a great example where you're not, I don't want to say you're growling, because that's really not a good definition of what you do, but there's just a little more to your vocals, and certainly in the guitars. Was that a purposeful change, or was that just kind of where you guys are now versus then? Or,
well, I always like when you can build that into a song. I mean, like, the songs have to call for it. Like, if you picture the wrong amount of kind of emotion or intensity has to match the song, the lyric, the intent of the song. So when these songs kind of came together, or even the seeds of them, we wanted to pick ideas that we thought we could really get into. And it's always been a fine line for us between, we want it to be heavy, but it's got to be melodic, And it's a weird combo sometimes. And I guess, from fans or everybody's perspective, that we kind of go and cross the line either way too much sometimes. But I think on this record that we kind of found that line quite easily and quite nicely with regards to, I personally like songs that are riff-based, that are heavy, because I think musically it sets the tone. And then vocally and melodically, if you can match that tone and, emotion and intensity, then I think you've got something there, right? And then if it's melodic on top, I think we got the best of both worlds. I mean, that's personally what I grew up loving about bands like Queen or Def Leppard or Boston, is that it had some balls to it, but it was also really melodic and very singable. Because I like songs, but I would just get bored if it was too light or too fluffy or too poppy, for the most part. And then, so it's a kind of a marriage of the guitar playing and the vocals coming together. And stylistically, again, I think it's just appropriate, the amount of, intensity and raunchiness or whatever for the songs. They feel right to me, at least. Sure.
Now, Harry, I wanted to ask you about, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I've never fully understood this, and this is more just information than anything else. But you guys obviously re-recorded Mood Swings because you didn't retain the rights to the material.
Right.
And I've heard that a million times, and I've never understood what that exactly means to you guys. As an example, I understand that a lot of times bands want to market their material out to, like, commercials or movies or whatever.
Yeah.
But what would stop a movie company or a commercial company from just going to Warner Brothers and saying, "Hey, we want to use No Justice in a song"? What I guess what I'm asking is, what forces them to go to you once you re-record it versus just going back to the original quote unquote holder of the rights?
Right. Well, I mean, rights are kind of divided into a few different categories. Basically, whoever paid for a recording owns the physical recording. Okay. So even though we wrote the songs and the performances are ours, we were, in essence, paid to do those performances, right? Mm-hmm. So Warner Brothers paid for those records, and they own the physical masters. So we can never take that recording and do anything with it on our own. It's always going to go through Warner's. And to answer your question, if somebody called and said, hey, we want No Justice in a movie, they wouldn't be calling us. They'd be calling Warner, and Warner would say, yeah, that's fine. How about $100,000? And the company would be like, how about not? You know, so typically major labels and major publishers, they keep the bar very high, right? Mm-hmm. From a financial perspective with regards to giving out rights, where indie artists and indie publishers, they'd be happy to take a quarter of that or $10,000 as opposed to $100,000 because that money would actually go to them, you know, as opposed to recouping a recording budget or a video or a tour support. Typically, major label bands, unless you sold 10 million records, you never recouped, you know? So you never recouped the recording costs and all those other things I just mentioned. So it's never in the artist's interest, or you really don't care. I mean, it never mattered to us whether we sold over 1 million records when we were with Warner, but we never got an artist royalty check. Wow. And that's because we always spent more money than we made, you know? And when you're doing it independently, at least you're in control of the flow of the money and how it works. So, you know, I'm being 100% honest, and I've, you know, never shied away from saying this. Mm-hmm. For us to do the Mood Swings reunion tour and not have product that we personally own, the only beneficiary would be Warner. Right. And why would we bother doing that? So for us to re-record the record and own it, not only now is it within our rights to sell that record, we get all the money from selling the record. And that would be the reason for us to re-record it and then own it again, because now we can sell it and we own the masters. Okay. And that, I mean, you know, because otherwise it's not so much a financial reward, but the finances in order to actually go out and do it. Like, we need the money sometimes from the record making and record sales to sometimes even play a show, believe it or not. And that is even what happened. You know, we just take all the income, put it together from live shows, record sales, publishing, and we pay our bills like any other business would. So if sometimes we're doing a show where we're not making enough money to even pay everybody that's, you know, crew, band, transportation, flights, we take money from other places. So we need that income in order to keep doing what we're doing. So, and if that money's going to Warner and we're out touring it to sell records for a label that we're not on anymore, it doesn't make any sense, right? No, that's Def Leppard, you know, they're like, yeah, we're not even with Universal or Mercury, I think it was at the time, which is Universal now. Why on earth would they be doing anything to help them sell records and make more money? You know, they're not even on the label anymore. Right.
Yeah, so. That makes sense. It always, you know, I hear a lot of bands say exactly what the standard line is, you know, to get back the rights, but nobody ever really explains that, and that's really a good knowledge to have. It makes a whole lot more sense now. So in essence, it's not necessarily about unless you're a huge band, unless you're, I don't know, Judas Priest or whatever, that Led Zeppelin, you know, it's not so much about marketing to commercials or movies or whatever, as much as having the ability to.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, you can own the rights to something. It doesn't mean it's worth anything, you know, so you really got to, you know, be careful about, you know, what you spend your time, you know, thinking about doing with regards to that. I mean, like, we wouldn't just record any of our records again because, honestly, it wouldn't be worth doing. So Mood Swings was worth doing for us because it was, you know, musically a special record for us. And also it was a record that we thought there would be interest in hearing, you know, another version of it 20 years later. And then tie that in with the whole touring and the you know, owning the rights to it, that all appealed to us, and it all worked for us on many levels. So that makes sense, but we're not going to make a habit of re-recording our records just to own the rights to it.
Sure, definitely. Now, Harry, obviously you have a new record that you did do, 13, and the industry's way different than it was when you did do Mood Swings originally. It's a whole different animal, you know.
Yeah.
How viable financially is doing a record now versus being a creative outlet for you? Because again, I'm not a musician. I can beat out some songs on some drums a little bit, but never on your level, on a professional level. And I just, as the industry has changed, I have to think that it becomes less about making money to sell records than it does to have your creative output. Is that true or not true at all?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I obviously ride the roller coaster of emotion. It depends on when you catch me, what my mood is on it. But, really at the end of the day, it's like, fortunately, we did well enough in the beginning where we have, a good firm hold on everything that we need to have in place to be able to continue. Because if we had to, pay for studio time or we had costs that were associated making these records that, really prohibited us of doing it, then we couldn't do it. We don't have day jobs. We never have, and it looks like we never will. So we do well enough still, being in Harem Scarem and doing other studio projects, that we're afforded that luxury. But I think, as I look around, and even friends of mine that, are doing what we're doing, even at the level we're doing it today, they can't afford to do it, which is a real shame, So either you had so much success before that you've got money and it doesn't really matter. We weren't that successful, but at least, for me, what I'm getting is with my money, I built a studio, so I have a commercial recording studio where other bands come. I make a great living, as a producer and owning a recording studio, and that allows me to make a Harem Scarem record and continue doing that. Even though I'm definitely not getting rich for making Harem Scarem records.
Right. They
pay for themselves, and by the time you're done them, 4, 5, 6 months sometimes, including the writing, you go, yeah, okay. I mean, like any minimum wage job would have paid me what I'm making off a Harem Scarem record. But then, the love of making music and wanting to do something with your time also plays into it. So, we're very comfortable with our situation and, moving forward. It's, I guess, a good situation that, we want to do it. We can continue to do it. Therefore, we find a way, in it within a year to make time to be able to do something like this. So, but I tell people, look, I have a day job. It just happens to be in the music business. I just saw a Facebook post the other day of it literally the heading was popular UK bands that have day jobs. And it's come down to that where it's just, the financial model for getting out there and doing what you're doing, it just doesn't pay enough to sustain a life other than, I don't know, like to kind of renting somewhere and then like not having anything,
Right.
So, I mean, I live a normal lifestyle of somebody that has a really good day job, so, and I want to continue to do that. So I work towards making that a reality and doing all kinds of different facets of the music industry to make that work for me. And Harem Scarem is a part of it. And it allows me, to continue, but also the other things that I do allow Harem Scarem to continue. Mm-hmm. So I know it's a long-winded, weird answer, but it all kind of works hand in hand, I guess, at the end of the day.
It definitely does. Now, Harry, one of the things I've always wondered, and I, for the life of me, can't figure it out, and I'll bet you probably can't either, but I'll ask anyway. What is it about Canadian bands that broke out right at the same time as you guys did within that kind of 10-year window that just didn't let it break big here in the States? And not only you guys, but you guys certainly were doing very similar stuff to the material that was out there, your Bon Jovis and Def Leppards and whatever of the world. But it was like you guys, and there was like Honeymoon Suite, and quite a few Canadian bands that had the same kind of a sound and the feel and the look and all of the pieces, but just didn't break and sold a lot of records elsewhere, but just did not break here. What do you think caused that?
Well, I mean, there's two reasons. One, once 1991 hit or Nevermind came out, the whole American radio scene changed, and also if you weren't signed directly to an American label, that was a problem, And we really didn't understand that. Like when we did our deal, we signed with Warner worldwide, but we were signed out of Canada. And the way all that worked was you're being funded by the Canadian arm of Warner Brothers, let's say, and you're getting money from them to make records. And from a business perspective, it's not the same money coming in for the other territories. So I didn't realize that till way, way later on, is that, the real goal is to have the bands that you've signed in the country where they're signed do well.
Right.
So put it this way, there was no incentive for a U.S. label, Warner included, for us to do well. There was more incentive for the acts that they signed directly to do well. And if we had been signed to Warner directly, that doesn't guarantee anything, obviously, but it certainly puts you behind the eight ball doing it the other way around. Like any popular Canadian artist, and I can almost say with 100% certainty, everyone I can think of, they all signed directly in America. Bryan Adams, Celine Dion, you name them. Shania Twain. The Canadian bands that didn't break through, a lot of them, Tragically Hip was unbelievably popular in Canada.
Sure.
Our Lady Peace was another one. Sold Diamond, which was 1 million records on one record alone. Friends of ours. Honeymoon Suite was another. All Canadian signings to major labels.
Wow.
So in the industry, as I kind of caught on and learned the business or whatever, it was well known then that you wanted to sign directly in America or the UK or one of the powerhouses, right? But Canada obviously is not a powerhouse country. We're less than 3% of the world market, and bands that are signed directly to Canadian labels were kind of treated that way on a global scale.
Sure.
So we did well. Despite that, and based on, just the music and having a fan base, we got to keep making records. But, in my mind, at least, that at least a contributing factor to why we never broke out in America. And like we weren't released in the UK and we weren't released in America for the first 10 years of our career. Like, I mean, that can't help, right?
Right.
So that's it in a nutshell,
Right.
Like never being released in those countries is you're not going to do well. You just can't. It's physically impossible. So.
Yeah, that might hamper you a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Your record is not available.
Right.
How's that?
And it's not like today where even if it wasn't released here, you still had YouTube or the internet or anything.
Well, picture none of that, and your album isn't available, and there's no promotion for you because you're not being released.
Right.
Like it's it would be a miracle if anybody ever even heard of you. So that was the situation with us. And countries, proof to the opposite, where Japan loved the band, put us out, promoted us like crazy, even would fly us over there once a year just to do promotion.
Sure.
We did extremely well, So obviously you need that machine behind you, the money, from the label and the push and the network, the infrastructure to make it happen. But obviously the will of the label to make it happen was very important from territory to territory.
Sure. So what's going on with you guys for 2015? Are you going to get out there and tour, or what is it looking like for the 13 record?
Yeah, I mean we're actually talking to promoters right now about doing some more dates, and festivals are always fun, and but they're more like in the summer or like kind of mid summer months and stuff like that. So we're kind of planning for, March, April, May, June of 2015 for dates. So we're just in the process of putting that all together right now.
Excellent. Well, the new record, as we said, is called 13. And Harry, what am I missing that you want people to know about the record or about the band or where they can go online, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't know. You know what? The one thing I could add is that we did a Pledge Music campaign, and if anyone's interested in getting a signed version of the CD or a T-shirt, things that aren't typically available through the normal route of distribution, they can check out our Pledge Music campaign on pledgemusic.com, and then just look for Harem Scarem. That's a whole other thing that we're doing, as well as the traditional release through Frontiers and in Asia. It's through Avalon Marquee, the label we've been with for like 14 years now. So it's the traditional release, the old way, however you got it before. Obviously, it'll be available on iTunes as well. But now this new thing as well, where we're offering up a few other things in case people don't know about it. Just be good for them to know.
Sure. Excellent. Well, like we said, the name of the album is called 13, and Harry, has a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track to end the interview with. So what would you like us to wrap this up with, and maybe tell us a story about it?
Let me see. I'll go with Garden of Eden, the opening track on the record. For Pete and I, we kind of felt that was a track that really came together nicely. All the elements of what we like, guitar riffs, big backing vocals. So I'm going to pick that one, Garden of Eden.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. It's Garden of Eden. It is Harem Scarem right here on your Classic Metal Show.